Hello guys, it is time for us to do another lesson for code.org. We are moving on to a lesson called Shapes and Parameters. So this lesson is actually, there's not much instruction needed. This is one of those activities where you're going to need to do a lot of kind of messing around with the numbers, messing around with the parameters, messing around with the location on the screen. And once you get into it, it becomes fairly simple once you understand how the parameters of shapes work in code.org. So first of all, before you watch the video, well, you're watching the video right now, before you start the lesson, I want you to go ahead and look at the Google Doc for today's lessons. These are the questions that need to be answered. So first of all, we're going to be talking about something called a parameter. So a parameter is an extra piece of information that's passed to a function to customize it for a specific need. So for example, we have x's and y-axis, so that shows us where the location of a shape is on the screen. And then today we're going to be adding two more parameters to that to change something else about the shape. Okay, so a parameter is an extra piece of information that will help us customize or change something. Okay, so here's a question I want you to answer first. So the rectangle block has two inputs that control where it's drawn, the x and the y position, and we did this in the last lesson. So if I said a rectangle at 100, comma 100, that tells me that the rectangle is going to go at the grid point of the 100 and the 100. So if you wanted these commands to, if you wanted the rectangle to be a different size, what additional information or input would you need to give the blocks? So think about it and type in what you think the answer is here, okay? After you're done the lesson, how can you use parameters to give the computer more specific instructions? And you use parameters to control your shape's location and size. Can you think of any other situations in which parameters might be useful? All right, so these questions will become a little more clear as we go through the lesson. Okay, so first things first, just as a reminder, you click on the link to go to code.org, click on sign in, continue with Google, and then select your account. Once you are in there, you're going to get to Unit 3. Now, mine show all the lessons. Yours, if I go to Student View, yours will only show the lessons that I've unblocked. So Lesson 3 is what we did before, and we are working on Lesson 4, which is today. You'll notice that there are no videos for today's lesson. Pretty well everything that's in the lesson is pretty self-explanatory. It's just a matter of manipulating numbers. Okay, so the question of the day, this is the question you're going to answer at the very end on that page that I just showed you. So in this lesson, the class continues to develop a familiarity with GameLab by manipulating the width and the height of shapes they use to draw. The lesson kicks off with a discussion that connects expanded block functionality, for example, different sized shapes, with the need for more inputs or parameters. The class learns to draw the versions of ellipse and rectangle that include the width and the height parameters, and to use the background block. So that's what you're going to be working on today. So if I go to my lesson overview, all right, let me close this part up here. All right, vocab. Parameter, an extra piece of information passed to a function to customize it for a specific need. That was also on the page that I showed you before. The new code, so background color is going to be one of your new code parameters. Ellipse, now we've used ellipse before with the x and the y, but you're going to notice there's now a w and an h. And rectangle, x, y, w, h. All right, you don't have any resources for this one, so let's get right into it. I'm going to do the first one, kind of walk you through it, and then I'll kind of go through the other assignments because as you can notice up here, there are quite a few skill building assignments. There are 5 skill building assignments. There is a practice, and then there is an assessment, and then there's always challenges at the end. Okay, once you get the hang of this, most kids love to do the challenges, and if you get all of your assignments done and you do more than one challenge, I usually count that as extra credit. Okay, so let's hit continue. Okay, So one of the things to notice, you're going to also have to make sure that you can see all of the instructions here. Sometimes you might have to scroll through. So for example, if it was like this, you would have to scroll through it, but we can kind of drag this down so that you can see the entire thing. I personally like to make my screen a little bit bigger. You don't have to. So remember, they show you a picture of what yours should look like. There's some code down here, all right? Based on the video that you watched in the last class, you should know what no stroke means, okay? No stroke just means there's no border around the shape, okay? Rectangle blocks have 2 more parameters than you use to control the size. Notice the no stroke block turns off the border for shapes, or the stroke for shapes. So it says, look at the code and try to figure out how the last 2 inputs in rectangle work. So we have this, 250 and the 100, which shows me, so if I go to 250, 100, that the rectangle, okay, well, actually, let's go to the first rectangle. So this blue rectangle says 100, 100. So I know that that blue rectangle is going to start right here at 100 and 100. What I don't know is what do this second 2 numbers mean, the 100 and the 200. The red one I also know is going to be located at 250 and 100, which is right here. But what I don't know is what are these last 2 numbers? 4. Okay, so let's run the program and see what it looks like. Okay, so see if you can figure this out. So we have 100 and 100, which correlates with the XY axis. So remember, when we measured the position of rectangles on our grid, the top left corner of the rectangle is at the intersection point. So this intersection point is 100, 100. So we go 50, 100, 50, 100. So there's 100, 100. And the red rectangle starts at 250, 100. So here we go. We start at 0, 100, 200, 250, and then 100. So there's 250, 100. Okay, but what do these last 2 numbers mean? Well, think about it. So we have to know, if you notice, these rectangles are bigger than the ones that we used in the last lesson. The ones in the last lesson were just one of these squares. This one, how wide is this one? So remember, these are 50s, right? So if we go count here, we go 50 and 50. So 50 and 50 is 100. So there's 100. Let's look at this one. We have 50 and 50, which is 100. So each of these is 100 units wide. Well, if you look at the code, the very first number for each of them are the same. We have 100 and 100. So we can determine, if you look over here, that the W and the H must stand for what? Well, the first number was the W, so it has to be width. So the second number, the 200 and the 150, must be the H, which most of us should know from math means height. So the second 2 numbers are the width of the shape and its height. So if you look at the blue shape, it's 100 units wide, 200 units tall. So we can count that. There's 100, then we have 100, 200. Okay, so there's my shape. This one is 100 wide by 150, and there's our 150. What you need to do, it says, look at the code and try to figure out how the last 2 inputs work. Change the numbers in the second rectangle to make the red rectangle longer than the blue rectangle. So if we want to make it longer, it has to go past this point, right? Because the blue rectangle's right there. We want it to go to this point. So we have to add another what? There's 50 and 50, 50 and 50. So 50 and 50 is 100, right? So we want to make this rectangle 100, 200, and another 50. So 250. So if you look at the second rectangle, this is our red one right here. If we change this number, the second one, which changes the height to 250, and we hit reset, when we hit run, there we go. Okay, so the second number is the height, and that's how you determine that. Okay, so I did that first one for you. And remember, guys, if you mess it up, you can always reset everything. So you go to version history, start over. So that's what I usually do for starting over. Okay, Now, the rest of these skill building activities, if you go through, there are 5 skill building activities that you need to do. And if you go through them one by one and look at the instructions, there will always be a picture on the right-hand side up here that shows you what yours should look like. First step, guys, is always to run the program that's already there. And you're going to get really good at understanding how, just reading the code, you will understand what should be on that page right now. So right now, if I hit show grid, we have a shape that's going to be green because it has a fill. We know it's going to be an ellipse, okay? And it's going to be located in the very center of the screen. We're at 200 by 200, but it's not going to be perfectly round like a circle. It's going to be shaped like an egg, like this. So if I hit run, there it is. So we can see it's 200 by 150. So here's 0, 50, 100, 150, 200. So it is 200 wide. And then there's 100, and then the 25 and the 25, which is 150. So your job is to make this orange ellipse show up behind it. This is where it gets tricky. So you're going to have to figure out what code needs to go in there. Now, I can tell you one thing, because you have 2 different shapes and they each have their own color, you're going to have to put another fill color in there. And the other fill color, it tells you up here, is orange. Okay, so you know you're going to have to use a fill color orange. You know you're going to have to use an ellipse. And the ellipse is going to be located in the center again, because you can see it's directly behind the green one. So you know that the first, let's do the color first. So I'm going to leave that as yellow. You need to change it to orange. Well, actually, let me just do that because that might be confusing if I don't. So we have our orange fill, and then our ellipse. Now the ellipse is going to be in the center. Now right now it says 400 by 400, which means it's going to be a circle because these 2 numbers are equal. Let's hit reset and run. So we have a bit of a problem here. So we lost our green ellipse, or did we? Did we lose it? Or did we just not position it correctly? Because remember, it drew the green ellipse first, but then what happened is we drew the orange ellipse and it just covered it up. So it's probably still there, but we have to reverse the order in which these show up. Okay, so let's do this. Let's move orange to the top and the ellipse right with it. And we've reversed the order. So if we reset and run, there it is. Now it doesn't quite look the same. So what you want to do is you want to make it less wide. So remember the width, and the height. So this is the width right here. Now we want it to be wider than the green one, but not all the way across. So if you look here, the green one is 200. If we put this one just 1 square past 200, that would make it 250. So if we hit reset and run it, there we go. So we have something that looks just about exactly the same. Okay, that's all I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to start it over here. And you're going to be working on the other skill building activities on your own. Read the directions. This one has to do with backgrounds. Okay, if you run it, it shows you what happens. And you can tell by this that here's our yellow background, here's our blue square. There's a purple square somewhere, but we don't know where it is. You're going to have to see if you can figure that out. So there's the challenge right there. Okay? So do your skill building activities, and then when you're done, this one here, again, if you run it, you should be able to see what happens to it. Okay? And then there is your assessment at the end. So you had to figure out how to make the grass go across in number 7. What you're going to do here is if you hit run, you see that it looks different than this. So you have to make this cloud, well, it's supposed to be a cloud, look like this. All right? Good luck. If you have any questions, please let me know.